I've learnt so much today, and I came with a really clear understanding of what I was going to say. And I'd have to say I've probably changed my mind 20 times throughout the course of the afternoon. The Thrive team gave me a bit of heads up last night and said, oh, you're last. Basically, don't blow it. And I thought, well, thank you for your support and your encouragement. And I wonder what you really want from me. I wonder if the thing that you want from me as the last speaker is to think about how some of these threads come together. And that sort of fits with my talk, but I'm going to sort of adapt as I go, because I was going to come and speak to you about something really, really uncomfortable for me. I think it's really good for us to challenge ourselves, but I know virtually nothing about technology. I don't expect I'm alone in that. I suspect most managers who work in the wellbeing sector left university having written every essay by going to the library. Okay, when you were at home, before you went to university, and you wanted to use the phone, your parents would say, you need to wait and don't be too long, and you'd use it sitting in the hall on the telephone table. You know, there are some dramatic changes that have happened in the course of my professional life. So I wanted to reflect a little bit on the challenge that presents in terms of working with children and young people, but I also wanted to talk about working in collaboration. I think collaboration is probably the word I have heard most today. And I've been reflecting as I've sat listening about whether that's a very personal thing, that in order to thrive, we actually need to feel some of that connectivity, or whether that's a system-wide challenge, that actually, in order to make dramatic changes, we need to think very acutely about how we collaborate with each other. And I've got a challenge about collaboration. I'm going to talk to you very particularly about our collaboration at the Youth Commission with a local organisation called First Central Group. But I've got a real challenge that collaboration can be an enormous waste of time, which flies in the face of most of what I've heard for most of today, because we all really like the idea of working together. But unless we're very particular about how we do that, it can create enormous amounts of organisational drag. It can slow us down, it can make us not fleet of foot. And even here, when you think about collaborating with government, you know that it can take the pace off your projects. So there's a certain amount of balance. No laughing about that. There's a certain amount of balance that I think we have to find in terms of working collaboratively, getting alongside other organisations and individuals, but equally about being really mindful about how we do it. And I've learned a huge amount over the last year about the strength of working collaboratively with our really unexpected partners. So the challenge that I'm going to leave you with, and maybe ask you to reflect upon while I'm speaking, is this little tiny bit of learning. I think we try and collaborate with people who know what we know. I think we only need to focus on collaborating with people who believe what we believe. And if the people who believe what we believe know different things, we are going to put some pace on the change that we try to make. Okay, I'll leave you with that. I'm going to probably say it more than once. Okay, I have only been in post 9 months. I'm brand new to Guernsey. And when I came into post, I took on this particular challenge. I wanted to better understand how our work was having an impact for local children and young people. I thought that was really important. And to give you some idea of the scope, in the last 12 weeks, we have worked with over 5,000 children. I've got 23 staff. We've had contact with over 5,000 children. And when I say that, that means everything from working in schools and delivering assemblies, to the 17 youth clubs that we run every week, both here and in Alderney, to the very intensive one-to-one support that we run for a number of children and young people over a 6-week period on rotation. And that one-to-one support would be around emotional health and wellbeing, around bereavement, and around sexual exploitation. So we do everything for completely universal to very targeted. I want to also really reflect, or I wanted our organisation to really reflect on how we improve the experience of getting that support. So we've talked a lot about collaborating with others, and I've had a lot of people talk about empowering service users, but actually, and we are probably the organisation on the island that talk about it the most. We run the Youth Forum, we do some amazing work with young people. It's simply not good enough. We've made a small step in the right direction about asking young people what they think. But actually, if we really want to change emotional health and wellbeing outcomes, we have to put the power with young people to help them to determine the kind of support that they want and how they organise some of the agencies that sit around them. In order to do that, we're going to have to work more effectively with our partners. Who said, was it Christopher, said something about coffeeing? Guernsey is the island of the coffee. I never knew that until I arrived here. And for those of you who've only come here to speak, you're missing a treat. Because if you spent 2 or 3 days here next week, you would get at least a dozen coffee invites. And you would be invited to go out and see how you could work collaboratively over coffee. I'm sure that there are great health deficits in coffee, but I'm not even going to go there. So I guess my challenge, although it's not rocket science, is really important. It is about thinking about how we change, how we work across the system. Okay. Now, when I first started to really think about how I was going to do this talk, I wanted to really think about collaboration and why it's important for us as an organisation. And I genuinely think it's not really a nice to have anymore. I don't understand how large parts of the system around the children and young people that I work with actually works. I just don't have the knowledge. I don't have the skills on my own, even though I've been working in children's services for relatively long period of time. I still don't have the skills, knowledge and understanding that I need to be fit for the future. I'm hardly fit for today. In 10 years' time, I'm going to be nigh on useless unless I find myself some partners to work with that enable me to understand the system as it exists today. And I was fishing around because I was thinking, am I the only person who finds this really difficult? I'm sure that can't be the case. I'm not remarkably stupid. I work hard. I try and keep up. And thankfully, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a useful study in 2016, and they looked at chief executives across 83 countries, 1,400 chief executives. And the number one challenge for these chief executives was how complex the system that they were trying to operate in had become, whatever their background. So it's not just about children's services. It's not just around supporting families, children and young people to thrive, but actually universally, the system's just become hard to navigate. And we need to look for unexpected partners in order to build our collaborative advantage, to build our capital. Okay. So we have got an amazing, imagine today, all of the strengths, the assets. We are, in terms of promoting emotional health and wellbeing, we are such an asset-rich community, like never before. We've got evidence-based approaches that enable us to make really good decisions around how services should sit around children, young people and their families. And actually, that's what we should see. But I think, in reality, what we see, the picture is slightly different. We are operating in an age of financial reductions. We are operating with children and young people presenting with increasingly complex needs. And I think that's hit real here on Guernsey, as well as just for our colleagues across the UK. I think that our response to those needs to be smarter and more effective, and we need to evaluate it better. And in that complex environment, what we actually do is we manage to create competition. So competition amongst potential providers. We fly in the face of collaboration. We become quite protectionist about our work, about our expertise. Lots of people have talked a little bit about hierarchy today. I'm from the third sector. I'm at the bottom of the emotional health and wellbeing hierarchy. I have many colleagues who I look up to in terms of their expertise and their brilliance in this. But the one thing that holds us together, this one fragile single strand that holds us all together, is safeguarding children. And I hope you'll agree with me that that's just not sufficient. I understand it is our duty to work together to safeguard children, but just safeguarding children will not support them to thrive. It will only help them to survive, and that is the absolute opposite of what we're trying to achieve today. And unfortunately, more often than not, that is what collaborative working looks like. It gets boiled down to this. I feel like I'm being really negative. Everybody's been so happy, and I can't believe you put me on after the drama people and the dance people and the pianos, and I'm banging on about safeguarding and how it's not going to be good enough. So, boys, really, the curation? I just ask you. Okay, so what does this really look and feel like? I think it feels a bit isolationist for organisations. We feel a little bit like we're standing alone. And I don't think it's just the third sector that feel like that. I think statutory services feel a little bit like that as well. As the purse strings tighten, as austerity bites a little bit, everybody retreats a little bit more. It's harder to get something out of an organisation that already feels stretched. And the service users that sit around us, I think they equally feel disconnected. I've asked lots of people over the last few weeks, lots of families that we're working with, and I get really, really diverse feedback. So they either tell me that they're completely overwhelmed, that actually services are all over them. They feel like they've got no space to breathe. Or they tell me that they just haven't had anything at all. You know, there doesn't seem to be this happy, well-coordinated middle ground where services are networked together and communicating really seamlessly. And I know that that's not supposed to be the case here, but actually that's what people are telling us is their experience still. Okay, so nevertheless, Guernsey, sorry, that was really cheesy. It's a really cheesy graphic. Guernsey, however, is incredibly asset-rich for families. Now, I think you have had to move here fairly recently to truly appreciate what a wonderful environment of opportunity we have here. And I suppose this is where I want to draw it back to some of those amazing talks we've heard all day. I have listened to my local colleagues wandering around going, we'll do that, I'm running a mile. I think I'm even running a mile. How can I be running a mile? I'm like, I literally don't have time for that, but apparently we are. We're all running a mile now. Thank you so much. That's a really great idea. But actually, that's because it is possible to make things happen here. Anything is possible. And I think there are reasons for that. This is probably one of the most generous communities that I've ever had the privilege to live within. People here volunteer. People here want to be part of a solution and they want to feel part of a community. There is virtually, and I say this for my UK colleagues in the room, there is virtually no sense of competition in the third sector. It's kind of rude to compete with one another. Yeah, we're very, very polite. We kind of want to work together. Nobody wants to cut across each other. We have got a perfect operating environment to create something really quite special. So all those deficits that I've just named, I think we have got the resources here to overcome them. And I think we have got the resources here to bring some of the assets that we've heard about today in the room into play. So, okay. So I said I would talk about one project, and I haven't at all. And I'm running out of time, so I need to get on with it. So my project was with an insurance company. So I said I was going to talk about unexpected partnerships. My insurance company, who are amazing, First Central Group, came to us a year ago and said, we'll have a go at working with you. What would you like to do? That's great. I get my presentation ready. I get my laptop out. And imagine I'm going to ask them for a technology solution to the problems that I posed right at the beginning of this talk. And I couldn't get onto the internet. Never mind. I said, don't worry about it. I used to be a teacher. Bring me a whiteboard. Bring me a marker pen. I'll draw it for you. I'm drawing away and I'm describing this incredible content management system. I'm describing, because I've got no notes in front of me, every good idea I've ever seen in 30 years of practice in any social care system I've ever seen, and everything my children have ever talked about that they liked on the internet that they kind of used to communicate with each other. And they went, yeah, I guess we can do that for you. I seriously nearly fell over. So you sure? Yeah. So we then refined that into a series of targets. We work in 2 weekly sprints. They've been delivering it for over a year, and it goes live next week. And I feel like Christmas has come. I genuinely do. I cannot say what an incredible asset this will be to my organisation. Their commitment has been phenomenal. And until today, their commitment has been really quite under the radar. So this is the first time we've really spoken about this project in public, and I guess it feels quite brave, because it's our commitment to them and theirs to us, and I am truly grateful, and they're an amazing organisation. Everything I've read about working collectively together says that you need to nail what your values are with somebody else. You need to really understand it, and I think that's quite a good idea. And in the spirit of really good collaboration, I got them to take on mine, which I thought was great. So I believe in children, so now they believe in children. Fortunately for me, their chief executive, who is an amazing human being, John Davidson, was very passionate about our cause. So when we said what we want to do is to ensure that every child in the bailiwick fulfills their unique potential, he said, that's a jolly good idea. I wish somebody had said that about me. I was a looked after child in the UK. And all of a sudden, we have this shared common vision, this understanding. This is the place we're going. They are driven. Their team is driven. And he took it even further, because I said, but you know what? We've got lots of children and young people who want to get into technology across Guernsey. What does that look like? Yeah, he said, that's not a problem. We'll have them. They can come and be apprentices. We'll work for them. And 3 of them are still being sponsored as they go off to university. So, you know, you have to put your commitment, your resources, where your aspiration lies. And they have just been incredible as an organisation. We developed this platform, and it does everything you would expect a content management system to do. And I have to say that's not particularly remarkable or innovative. So if I had really deep pockets and lots of money, I could have bought a similar system, as many of my colleagues in social care will be able to tell me, from almost anywhere in the UK. The thing it wouldn't be able to do is it wouldn't be able to measure the impact that I want to measure, because I'm just not measuring any children's outcomes. I'm measuring the children's outcomes against the Guernsey Children and Young People's Plan. I think it's really important that if you want to inspire people who've never collected that kind of data before, you need to make it local and you need to make it relevant. They've enabled us to do that. And by the time that this platform goes live, we will have this incredible wealth of data around our children and young people. Still not great enough. Good, really good, and free, not free. Good value. Lots of effort and energy, lots of people's time, but no financial cost to us as an organisation. This is the magic. In our first setup conversation to them, I said, what would it look like then if we were able to manage our content, our children's information from one end, but children were also able to access this platform themselves? They would have their own portal, they would manage their own information, they would be able to tell their story once, they would be able to participate in their service planning. If they were a child in care, they would be able to put their voice directly into the decisions that were being made around them. Lots of our 16-year-olds, when you sit down with them and say, we're going to build you a CV, tell me what you've done, they go, oh, do you know, Grand Theft Auto, I'm great at that. You know, there is a real memory lapse for some of our children and young people. Actually, they find it really hard to recall the fact that they were a really great goalie in year 9. That's gone within a couple of years. So this platform will build a record of their success, a record of their achievement. It will enable them to communicate with their workers directly, to nudge their staff and say, actually, I'm not having a really great week this week, and I'd really like a little bit more. And it will give us an opportunity to map their well-being. So we're building in applications to the back of this platform that invite children and young people to log in and say how they're feeling, how you're doing today. The next phase of this is probably the most exciting thing I've ever really dared to dream we could do. And it won't happen in this bit of the development. But being an insurance company, they're really good at managing risk, and they're really good at indicating risk. And what they think they have in their back pocket are a whole set of algorithms that we can turn around and choose to use to help us predict when children and young people start to go into an emotional health and wellbeing decline. If we can do that, we can provide the earliest intervention ever. And that, I think, not only will be an incredible asset for children and young people, but it will save us an absolute fortune as a society. Okay, last bit. I said I'd talk about 3 partnerships. The third one is potentially with any of you. What we don't want to do is hold this tight. This is genuinely about collaboration. It's a way to bring organisations together to share information, to share data, to share access, to bring their resources, to plan together without creating that organisational drag that I started to talk about right at the beginning. It is going to be a long journey. We are going to face some really big hurdles, but I think that actually if we begin now and start thinking about it for organisations in the room, we have an opportunity to come together and create something really quite successful. Thank you very much.